Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today you get to see my face instead of my hands because Annabel from the Orchid Room has tagged me in her Orchid Tag episode, which means that it's my turn now to answer a whole bunch of questions about myself and about how I grow orchids. So if you were wondering a little bit more about me, then this is the episode for you to find out. And thank you Annabel for tagging me. It gave me another video to do to get started again with the whole YouTube thing after I'd start work. And let's just dive right in. So the first question is, what part of the world are you growing your orchids in? So I'm located in Geneva in Switzerland, and that's where I grow my orchids. But soon I'm expecting to be moving to another part of Switzerland called Morges, which is only a little bit further north from Geneva, not all that much at all. It's like an hour by train, so no less. No, it's like 40 minutes by train. So it's not a big a difference. The climate is going to be just exactly the same. And yeah, that's where I grow my orchids, in Switzerland. So, second question. How long have you been growing orchids? And can you remember which was your very first orchid? Plus, have you still got it? Okay, so I've been growing orchids since exactly the 1st of November, which I know because I still have to receive from the first orchid. And so I'm pretty new. I'm a bit of a noob, actually. And as for my very first orchid, I must have had orchids in the past. I know I have. But I was never overly interested in them. So it was more like someone gave me an orchid, it had pretty blooms, and then when they fell, I got rid of it, to my current shame. But I only really got into it on, like I said, on the 1st of November. That's when I actually got interested. And see, the first ones then that I got were, right, so I bought 3 at the same time. And one of them, I got 3 different genera even, all at the garden center. One was a Phalaenopsis, just a mini Phalaenopsis, which is this one over here. It's not currently in bloom, but I can put some blooms up somewhere on the screen if you like. And that one's still doing pretty well in self-watering leca. It has grown, I think, 3 leaves since I got it, and dropped 1. But yeah, it's doing well. So that's one of the 3 that I got first. And another one was a Dendrobium, which is this one. So this is a Dendrobium, well, it's a no ID, they're all no IDs, but this one looked very much like a Stardust Chiyomi, which is the yellow version of what's the more common one called the Firebird. And something went wrong with it. I potted it too deep in the leca because I was a noob. It was my very first orchid together with 2 others, and it got black rot. So I cut away a lot of Dendrobium and I was pretty sure it was going to die. But to my surprise, Dendrobiums are extremely hardy, and instead of dying, it made a whole flush of keikis. So yeah, it was quite rare to keiki itself to death even. I think I cut off half of the keikis to stop them from developing, and it still has this whole amount, and that's not even all of it. Beyond that, we also have this one here, which is also one of its keikis that I took off and potted up separately, and another one of roughly this size, which I already swapped away with someone on Orchid Swap. So this was an Oncidium that I bought, and it looked like the Alicera, what's it called? Perrywood Carpenter Morning Gem? Something like that. It was a very pretty flower. I'll put it up on the screen as well somewhere. And when I got it and I unpotted it, I realized it had 0 roots, like nothing. And I didn't know it when I bought it because back then I didn't quite know how to properly assess the health of an orchid, let alone a Oncidium that I'd never really seen before. So yeah, I've potted it up like this, which is in a vase to increase humidity and all that, and was hoping that would save itself. And it started growing this new growth here. I'm not sure how well you can see it, but then it just stopped and it never actually made any roots. So I'm pretty sure this one's dead. The pseudobulbs are now also browning, more and more leaves are falling off. I really doubt this one's ever going to recover. So I think this is the only one of the first 3 that I got that is going to go. It's just not going to survive. So those were my first orchids. And let's see, what is the next question? Right, so what got you into the orchid growing hobby? So what got me into the orchid growing hobby was that my boyfriend's mother came to visit us here in Geneva, and I took her to the botanical garden, which is right next door, where we saw a bunch of strange plants and we googled them, and then when we were googling we found even more strange plants, and we got home and we googled even more. And then after she left, I was still, I still had the tabs open, and I went to YouTube to see whether there's any videos on weird and funky plants, and I realized that a lot of the strange plants I came across were actually orchids, which kind of blew my mind, because the only orchids I knew back then were the Phalaenopsis type. That's the only one I ever saw or knew about. So I kept looking a bit more, I checked YouTube for orchid videos, and I realized there was this channel from Miss Orchid Girl, which a lot of you are probably familiar with, who literally had more than 1,000 videos just on how to take care of orchids. And that again blew my mind, because how can you talk that much about one type of plant, right? Well, little did I know. So I clicked on it and I watched it a bit, and it was nice, it was nice background information while you were doing something else. And at some point I realized that the information I was getting from the video I could actually try putting into practice myself. So I went to the garden center, I bought those 3 orchids and I tried myself, and I got hooked almost immediately. It was fun. It was fun to have some theoretical knowledge and actually apply it practically, which I'm not used to being able to do. So yeah, I was instantly into it, really. Then the next question. What kind of growing space do you have? Windowsills, growing greenhouse, outside, etc. So my growing space is basically what you can see around me here. I don't have any outside space. I only have my desk and the walls around it, kind of. So what I have is one big eastern facing window, and I just put shelves up on the wall next to the window. I put some plants next to my desk on a separate little desk. I have one bookcase here, one of those open bookcases that have a few orchids in them, and that's about it. So my growing space is literally all inside in my one bedroom apartment. And the golden rule in the household is that the orchids are not allowed to get in the way. So they're only barricaded around my desk, basically, so my boyfriend doesn't get bothered by them. Let's see. Oh yeah, I can tell you a bit about the temperatures and humidity as well. So in the summer it gets really hot. We had a heat wave this summer, and the temperature in the apartment didn't dip below 34 degrees centigrade even once. And for the entire summer, it never got lower than 29. It was very, very hot. Quite uncomfortable, actually. But the plants seem to be okay. And the humidity in the summer is pretty decent. It tends to be around 45–50% relative humidity. But in the winter, it gets a lot worse. In the winter, the lowest temperature we get is 18 degrees because the heating goes on. But the humidity goes down to like 10% humidity if I have nothing like humidity trace or humidifiers on. I have a humidifier, and when that one runs literally constantly, 24/7, I can get it up to maybe 30% humidity, but that's literally the highest I've gotten it so far. So humidity is a bit of a problem for me in the winter. Let's see. How many types of genera of orchids do you grow, and what are they? Okay, how many genera? So I have Phalaenopsis. I wrote it down actually. Yes, I have Phalaenopsis, which is both complex hybrids and novelties. I have one single Cattleya, which you see in bloom over here. I have a Laelia, which is further back there. I have 2 Dendrobium nobiles, 3 Dendrobium Phalaenopsis, 1 Bulbophyllum, which is not doing well, and I have a Cymbidium. I have 4. I have 4 Cassetinae because I got another one yesterday. And I've got some Oncidiums, an Epidendrum, and a Vanilla Vine. And I think that's all of it. Pretty sure that's all of the genera. Yeah, that's all. So how many orchids do you have, roughly? So I think that now I have roughly 40 orchids. I could count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 43 orchids! So that's more than I thought. I thought it would be like just about 40. But you know, compared to some people, Annabel, it's really quite a small collection. Let's see, the next question is, what would be the one thing you could say is your top orchid gripe or peeve? Okay, so the main thing that ticks me off is actually very similar to what Annabel said in her video, which is a community thing, where there are a few people in the orchid growing community who really seem to think that they know best for everyone. And this generally comes back to, oh, I've grown orchids for 20 years and I have this wonderful specimen that blooms every year and I know exactly what you need to do. But then they seem to kind of ignore the fact that environment is different for everyone and that everyone has their own different challenges. The thing that they do in their environment, which works great for them, might not work for me, and vice versa. An example is a sphagnum bag, right? For me it works. I don't get mold problems. But if Annabel tries it, she gets a mold bomb. And it's not because she does the technique incorrectly, that's just a different environmental factors. So those people tend to really tick me off. And the second peeve I have is sort of related to that, and it's to do with the watering of catasetum types. Every spring you get the same debate, where it's like, do I water my catasetum or do I not? And you have these pictures that are put online of people's catasetums that are like horribly shriveled and small and like, you know, shriveled beyond repair. And then people still tell them, no, don't water because your roots are not 3 inches long yet. They have to be at least 3 inches, possibly 4 or 5 inches before you start to water. And I absolutely hate when people say that, because look at the plant, it is shriveled beyond repair. It's going to die if you don't give it water. Give it water. And in fact, when I googled, I found more stories of people having their catasetums killed because they watered too late than people who got catasetums killed because they watered too early and got rot. So that's something that really gets me worked up, the fact that people keep telling people to wait and to adhere to the golden rule of thumbs, because there are no rules in orchid growing, not really, there's guidelines, and what works for one doesn't work for the other. And if your orchid is telling you it needs to water because it shrivels from a big plump thing to this tiny thing, give it water, it's what it's asking for. Anyway, you can tell I'm getting worked up, this is one of my peeves. So the next question is, what are your favorite places to buy orchids and your least favorite? Okay, so my favorite store is not going to be very useful to you, I'm afraid. It's the Orchidarium in Switzerland. I've gotten my orchids there 3 times now, maybe 4 times, and it's a wonderful place, but you have to go there in person because they don't have an online store and they don't ship. So you have to actually go in person to the store and get your orchids. And it's in Lyon, Prangin, I think that's how you say it, Prangin. It's a French name, my French isn't that good yet. And they have 3 greenhouses full of really wide genera of orchids and really well grown. Every single orchid I got from there has been really healthy, really mature. I got some of them recently, if you saw my previous video, like this one, which has 3 mature spikes and the 4th one growing. And yeah, it's just, they have amazing stuff. And they also have a bunch of novelty falls, which are one of my favorite genera. So I'm always super happy to go there. So that's definitely my favorite place to order, to get orchids. If we're talking about online buying, then so far I've been a bit of a fan of Classen Orchids. So the orchids you get from them aren't the largest or the most mature, but they tend to be healthy, and their customer service is fantastic. I had a problem with one orchid once that was packaging correctly and got completely mangled on transport, and they instantly responded by saying that they would take, I could either ask for a new plant on my next order, or I could remove the value of the plant from my next order as a sort of discount, and I was quite happy to do that because the other plants I was going from them were fine. And Ynse, which was the person I talked to in customer service, was super helpful with providing information about plants when I wasn't sure about how to pot something or what its ancestry was or all this kind of stuff. She was super helpful, and it was always just a pleasure to communicate with them. As for a place I do not like to get my orchids are supermarkets and flower stores, just generic flower stores. The reason being that in supermarkets they distract me from my groceries and they tend to be really poor quality. You tend to take them home and see that there's a real problem with the root system. So I tend to, unless I really see something special, which is rarely the case, I don't get anything from grocery stores anymore. And the same goes for flower stores really. They have special stuff more often, but usually it's overpriced and it's really poor quality. So those are my least favorite places to shop. Let's see, the next question what is the worst advice you've ever been given, and did you take that advice? Okay, so the worst advice I've ever been given is to remove all roots from your orchid that looks like it might be dead. And I did take it, I'm afraid. And when I was new, and this is actually what I think largely killed my Alicera, the one I got, one of the three that I got at the start, is that I saw those dodgy looking roots, and I said, okay, someone told me to cut all of them off, all the dodgy looking ones, because they'll just make things worse. So I went in and I very brutally snipped almost every single root. And I've since learned that Ynse roots, the really thin ones, can look a little bit misleading. Sometimes they look dead, but they really aren't. And yeah, this one hasn't recovered. While other orchids, Ynse types I have, like those two up there, I'm not sure if you can see them, they had dodgy looking roots as well, but I kept them on because I figured it's better than nothing. And they've recovered really well. Well, that one never recovered. So I'm sure I'm just really bad at judging the health of Ynse roots. And then leaving more on is better than taking too many off. So that was the bad advice I'd taken. So now whenever I see Ynse with dodgy looking roots, or even just another type with dodgy looking roots, but I'm not sure if it's dead or not, I leave it on. If it's, if it dies off, I can always go back and cut it off another time. So the next question. Out of the orchids you own, which are your 5 favorite orchids? And try to include the actual orchid in your video if you can, or a picture of the blooms. Okay, so my favorite ones. One of them is unfortunately not in bloom right now, but I can put some pictures up. My favorite is Mini Mark. I really like the Mini Mark. It's my first wishlist orchid that I had, and the first one I got as well for my wishlist. Because there was just something about, I made a whole video on it. You can go back and see it. I like this plant so much. I made a whole separate feature video on it somewhere early on when I started making videos. So I recommend that if you're more interested in this particular plant, you check it out. But this is definitely top 5. Now, for the other ones, I really like my Catasetinae. So that means my Frecklecara After Dark, which has grown nice and plump this year. I also gave some sunburn to all my Catasetinae because I was still experimenting with how much light they can take. But my Catasetinae are really dear to me. I really like them. And there's my Cloecia Grace Dunn, and there's my Signoides Windowsills, which I haven't seen in bloom yet, but it's making a flower spike right now. I can show it to you. See? I hope you can see it. I hope the camera is focusing correctly. It's making a flower spike right now, so I'm really looking forward to the blooms. And I recently bought a new one, which is the Catasetum Pangum Sweetheart. And look at the size of these bulbs. They're huge, and I think they'll open by the end of this week or something. I'm really looking forward to it. So those, but then I also really like my summer blooming falls. So yeah, I really like my Samara because the smell is wonderful. It's really nice. It's one of my favorite smells that I've had so far. And a recent addition that I really like as well is this one, which is a little bit of a no ID. They knew it was a Gigantia cross, they didn't know which one anymore. So I'm guessing it's a, oh god, I lost the name again, Mok Choi Yu, which is Gigantia crossed with Violacea. But it's a really huge flower, and I really like the shape of it, and I really like the coloration. So those I think are my favorites. For now at least. They tend to switch. And let's see, the next question. Have you got an orchid related story which is funny, interesting, or sad? Well, I do have one or two. And one of them, I've already told one of them, I think, in one of my previous stories about my first rebloom, which is that I was super excited when I saw one of my orchids begin to spike. It was a Phalaenopsis, one of the first ones I got. Not the first ones, but it started to create a spike. And I was super excited. On social media I started writing to people like, oh my god, I'm going to get my first rebloom, I'm super excited. And then it decided to do something silly, and instead of making flowers, it made a keiki right at the end of the spike. It's making a little root right now. So that meant no blooms, and it was a little bit disorienting. But yeah, now I'm going to get a second generic IKEA Phalaenopsis, which isn't really what I asked for. But on the other hand, it might make a really cool display if it's mature and, you know, they both flower at the same time. That would be really cool. So I'm going to keep it up there. It looks funky and it's a funny reminder. Beyond that, what advice would you give someone about to start growing orchids and building up a collection? Okay, so I think my main advice is to literally just go wild. Because the hobby is most fun when you're just experimenting and trying new things out and researching new things and obsessively gaining new knowledge. Make projects. So don't just listen to, you know, the generic advice of water once a week, all that kind of stuff. It won't make you a better grower and it won't be as fun. Really just go all out. Think about what an orchid likes environmentally and then try and find creative ways to make that work in your environment. Try out controversial new methods like self-watering or mounting things on a cooling log or whatever you can think of. Design your own pots, you know, that kind of stuff. That's the fun part of this hobby. And the second advice I would give is don't believe any rules. Rules don't exist. What you have are guidelines. You have things that work for a majority of people, but that definitely never work for all people. And as long as you remember that, as long as you remember that every single advice has to be taken with a grain of salt, sometimes a mountain of salt, you'll do fine. But remain critical. You have to keep thinking about how things work in your environment, and if something doesn't work, don't keep doing it just because someone told you it should work. It doesn't work. Done. Find something new, try something else, or try and adjust it until it does work. And lastly, don't believe anyone who sells you that they have like a miracle cure or a silver bullet or like the perfect medium. Again, it doesn't exist. Everything's different for everyone's environment and everything's different for every single plant. Perfect solutions don't exist. All you can do is keep experimenting, and that's the fun of it. So I think that was all the questions. Yeah, that was all of the questions. So thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed learning a little bit more about me and my collection, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye!